it sets off a chain reaction, right? So it can happen that the environment or the circumstances that you're in are creating the state change and changing your breath because of that. But it can also work the other way around, where we can shape the breath consciously to create a desired result, so that even if we are in a situation that feels stressful, or we're feeling really lethargic, or we're just not able to focus, that we can breathe in a particular way to impact the nervous system and the brain and change our state.
Hey, welcome to the Bodies Built Better podcast. I'm your host, Jackie Tan, and I appreciate you being with me here today. This show is all about human performance and everything it means to perform at your best. As humans, there are so many things that impact our lives and the way we show up. And I want to make sure that I cover as much as possible. So whether it's the training and the recovery and the sleep and nutrition, to the energy and the things that we don't see or understand or have a better understanding of, whether it is our emotions, our mental state, but also the energy that we bring and that others bring and how we're affected by that as well. It is all so fascinating to me, and it all has an impact on the human body, I believe. So diving deep into that is something that is really a passion of mine. And today on the episode, I have the pleasure of once again chatting with one of my favorite people, meditation teacher, author of Heavily Meditated and The Hope Dealer, and founder of the Heavily Meditated app, the wonderful, beautiful, gorgeous Caitlin Cady. And today on the episode, we're talking about the breath and breathing. And obviously, we all know how important it is, but it's truly the gateway to better health and well-being. And of course, with that, our ultimate performance. The thing I love about chatting with Caitlin about breath is that you can show up with absolutely no knowledge of the human body, anatomy, physiology, biochemistry. And she's able to talk you through how to maximize breathing in a way that's going to help you straight away. Like, it literally is so powerful. When you do these techniques with her, you're going to notice the difference instantly. And that's why we had to talk about breath. The awesome part is at the end, she takes us through a breathing technique that is one of my favorites and that I probably use every single day, whether it's on the way to work in the car or whether it's before bed. It's one that I constantly go to because it's so powerful and helps me so much in that moment. So without further ado, let's dive straight into it, all around the breath with Caitlin Cady. Caitlin Cady, welcome back to the Bodies Built Better podcast. We are talking about breathing and breath work today. You have a course that you've run all around the breath, and I've taken it. I've taken a few different breathing courses actually, and I love taking, elements from all of them and just applying all the things that fit me in the moment. I think that's the beauty of learning. But breathing, let's start with why it's so important to our nervous system, or maybe let's talk about the nervous system to begin with, because I think that's like key to everything.
Yeah, so true. Okay, so I guess to begin, I might give like a little synopsis of why it matters, and then we can talk about the nervous system. So the breath is, you can think of it as a toolkit that you can use to change your state. So whether that's dialing down anxiety or, stopping that sort of spin cycle of stress that we can get caught up in, or creating a sense of calm or focus, or creativity. There's all these different states that we can create by consciously shaping the breath. You have this incredible, it's like you have dials right into your state, but you have to know which dials to turn, right? And the breath really is this sort of tangible link that we have to the nervous system. So if you want to change the way that you feel, you just need to change your breath. And the reason for that is that the breath is directly linked to the autonomic nervous system. So we won't go like too far into it, but the autonomic nervous system is essentially the network in your body that's responsible for all of the functions that your body does automatically, hence the word autonomic. So breathing, circulation, digestion, all of these kind of things. And so depending on how we're perceiving our experiences and environment, the autonomic nervous system will respond by activating one of its two branches. So you have the sympathetic nervous system, which we can call the SNS, which is also known as fight, flight, and freeze. You probably have heard that term. And then on the other hand, you have the parasympathetic nervous system, the PNS, which is nicknamed rest, digest, repair, and reproduce. So if you think about a time where you've maybe been triggered by something, let's just say like you're on an airplane and the turbulence is popping off. Okay. What happens is that your breathing pattern changes in response to that stimulus. And then that creates this sort of, it sets off a chain reaction, right? So it can happen that the environment or the circumstances that you're in are creating the state change and changing your breath because of that. But it can also work the other way around, where we can shape the breath consciously to create a desired result, so that even if we are in a situation that feels stressful, or we're feeling really lethargic, or we're just not able to focus, that we can breathe in a particular way to impact the nervous system and the brain and change our state. Does that make sense, Jackie? How did I do in my elevator pitch?
Yeah. Perfect. And by the way, as soon as you said turbulence in a plane, I got all
I saw you.
I'm not a good flyer. And yes, I am very conscious of the way I breathe now when I'm on a plane, because as soon as that happens, I hold my breath. Heart rate speeds up, very sweaty palms. And it's it's something that can be, is controlled by my breathing when I actually start to breathe again, because you need to be breathing, but in a really slow and controlled manner. And that's, yes, I've experienced that in the past.
Yeah.
How powerful it is.
It's huge, and it feels it's amazing, right? Because you think, oh, this is actually all just generated in my brain.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong. Everything's fine. Hopefully.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm always looking at the flight attendants like, are they freaking out? Okay, they're cool. I'm cool. But it's just like your mind is stirring up this whole scenario and reacting to a situation where actually everything is like, this is just, normal. It's fine. Everything's fine. But it can trigger, it's amazing the power that the mind has to create that kind of state change in the body based on just like an idea of something. So I'm curious, I want to circle back and ask you about, once we get a little further down the track, about what has worked well for you in that moment. But basically, just to like sum that up again, your intentional breathing can be like the tripwire to shaping your state. So it can shift you out of the fight and flight response and into the rest, digest, repair, reproduce. But also there's a time where you want to be activated in the sympathetic nervous system. So you do want to be careful not to like demonize that aspect of the nervous system, because it's there for a reason and it can be useful. But in general, most of us are kind of stress cases, and we need a little more emphasis on creating calm. So and then how does that work? Well, it works in a number of different ways. It works with the anatomy of the breath in terms of the way that the vagus nerve is interfacing with the diaphragm, which is why you've probably heard people talking about diaphragmatic breathing, because it's the main organ of respiration that nobody's heard of. Everybody always thinks about the lungs, and it's like, it's all about the diaphragm. So you want to look at the diaphragm and whether you're breathing in the belly, using the diaphragm, or you're more fully, everyone is using the diaphragm, or in the chest. But then there's also different techniques you can use where you're creating valves, either in the nostrils or at the throat or with the tongue. And then you can even work with the left and right nostril in different combinations to bring online the different aspects of the brain. So, there's a contralateral association between left nostril, right brain, right nostril, left brain. And then you can also look at the ratios of the breath. So there's like this incredible, again, like you can really even picture like a dashboard with all of these different combinations of techniques that you can use to shape the breath in different ways that used in combination can create all of these different outcomes for you. So it's super, super powerful.
It really is. It really is. Yeah, I love hearing your your teachings around the breath, because the way you teach it is so practical and applicable at any and all levels. So you can hear what you're saying and get it. Whereas, you with all the stuff that I've learned, you kind of need to have a good understanding of all the terminology, right? Yep. That's what I love about talking with you about this, is that it doesn't matter what you know right now. When you hear the way you explain it and, what we're going to do further into this episode, people can do it straight away. People can apply it straight away, and they can understand what it's doing and why they need to be doing it and how to do it. So I'm loving all of this.
Yeah, I love it too. We could talk about it all day. I know. And there's so much to learn about it, right? Like there's so many different ways of approaching it, and so many different sort of traditions of working with the breath, but also now you're getting a lot of, folks who are digging into the science of it. And there's a lot of crossover. But I guess it's also worth mentioning that, like, for me, it's not just about creating the state change on a purely sort of scientific level. The breath, as I've learned to work with it, is just a vehicle for prana, and energy, which is, energy or life force. And so I think sometimes when we hear the word pranayama, we think that it means breath work, but it actually is talking about shaping, controlling, and directing, building energy in the body. So there's another sort of subtle aspect of the breath that often doesn't get discussed because, like we've talked about before, Jackie, it's like we can be sort of like transactional, or we're just like looking for like, I just want this 1 minute technique that's going to give me what I want. Which is, I get that. And that's part of what I'm offering is like, here's a menu of options for how you want to feel. But I also think that there's, it's worth just mentioning that breathwork and pranayama are not synonymous, that pranayama, one of the tools it uses is the breath, but that's not the only tool encompassed in pranayama. And also worth noting that pranayama is traditionally used in preparation for meditation. And when you think about that, it makes so much sense, right? As like you want to, depending on the type of meditation you're going to do, you would select a pranayama, and prior to that, an asana practice that would help deliver you in the direction that you're wanting to go. And it's really about impacting the nervous system and the movement and flow of energy in the body. But it's I think it's so overlooked and so profound in the impact that it has.
Can we talk about that a little bit more around the pranayama, the energy, how we're moving that and how it's connected to the breath?
Yeah. So there's prana moves into the body and in many different ways, like food, water, the inputs that you're taking in through your senses, your sense organs, and from the breath. So obviously all of these different things have an impact on, sort of prana coming into the body. And then there's different ways of directing prana in the body. So there's naturally occurring prana vayus. Vayu means wind, that are just naturally functioning in the body. So like one example is apana vayu, which is a downward moving energy. So that's the prana that's associated with elimination. So it's associated with sort of, biological elimination, defecation, childbirth, menstruation, grounding, and that aspect of sort of grounding and release, right? So you can work with that
So what was that again?
Apana.
Apana.
Apana. Mm-hmm. So then you have I'll give you one more example of, samana vayu, which is circulation, digestion. And it's sort of at the belly area, and it moves in a certain direction. So there's 5 different prana vayus, and there are different kriyas that you would do that might work with these different vayus to generate an outcome, right? To have an effect or balance the energy in the body in a certain way. So it's just incredible. It's just incredible, like the complexity of these like ancient technologies that are out there, and the breath is just one part of it. And I notice a lot, like when I'm here, I like to listen to, sort of like science podcasts about these things. And I notice like, whether they're talking about, meditation or working with the breath, that there's often it's taken out of context a lot of the time. And I sometimes wonder, when you extract it like that, do you miss out on the overall impact and richness of these practices?
Can we dive deeper?
Yeah.
What do you mean by that?
Well, I guess
what's the richness we're missing?
Well, I mean, there's so many layers to it, but we've talked before about like we're a microcosm and we're living in a macrocosm. So there's one aspect of that, of like you're just a tiny universe existing in this bigger universe that's existing in a bigger universe, right? So all of the elements in this universe that we're living in on this earth are existing within ourselves. So when you look at it, like there's so much inspiration from nature in these practices, and even in the meditation practices, and it's because I believe that so many of the answers and the understandings came from understanding the relationship to nature and understanding the nature of our bodies as physical beings, but also as spiritual beings. So there's this aspect of like, you're not looking at it in the context of the tradition itself. It can be also extractive in that people aren't telling you where these practices came from, and they came from the yoga tradition, and that needs to be named, just because somebody put their name on it or put a cute, snappy title on it, that's erasing the connection to culture. And, I think I try to be aware of cultural appropriation in my work. I don't think I'm successful at avoiding it 100% of the time because I'm a white lady, but it is something I'm aware of. And I try to call attention to the origin of these practices, because it's important that we don't bring that sort of like capitalistic mindset of like, I'm just going to take all the good stuff. Quote,
yeah, it's like watering something down.
It waters it down, which isn't great for you on the receiving end, but it also like is sort of like strip mining indigenous cultures and indigenous wisdom.
Mm-hmm.
So not all sort of breath practices that are being taught have their origin in the yoga tradition, for example, but plenty of them do. And plenty of them aren't calling a spade and saying this is actually what this is and where it comes from. And that's okay. But I want to be a person who's going, if you're looking for more on this is where it comes from, because I don't want to deny people the opportunity to connect with that incredible culture of just sophisticated wisdom and richness. And it's just stunning like how much is there, and how you can spend your entire lifetime learning about it, I believe, and still not even touch the sides.
Absolutely.
So I don't know if I kind of answered the question, because there's just so much to say on that, but I think it's an important point.
Yeah. No, it's hugely important, and it's beautifully articulated. So thank you. I guess the other thing is what science doesn't quite touch on is energy.
Yeah.
And that is a huge part of, like even what you mentioned with, was it extraction? No.
Elimination.
Elimination.
Yep.
That's the one. Yeah. Like, around that. But even, when you're talking about that external environment, even people and people's energies and,
or TV that you're watching.
Yeah. I mean, everything around us.
Yeah.
Where's the science around how that impacts our physiology?
Yeah.
Our mental state.
I was listening to this podcast with this scientist recently, and he was saying like there's just no science to support that grounding, and he means like walking barefoot on the earth, has any benefits. And I was like, I bristled.
I just did.
Yeah, I guess because like I do feel like I have a keen level of discernment. And I have a healthy dose of cynicism. But we've talked about this before. It's like just because you can't see it on a lab result doesn't mean it's not real. So while I do think that we need to be discerning about I think there are people just making shit up out there for sure.
Yeah.
I also think that there are like wisdom traditions that maybe we don't have the language for yet, but these ancient traditions, like if you look at it, really a lot of this stuff, it's kind of hilarious, right? So there's all these white guys working in labs that are like, you should do this, you should breathe this way, you should meditate, you should spend time outdoors and get natural sunlight. And then you like look at indigenous cultures and they're like, yeah, we've been doing that for 60,000 years. So
exactly,
like, and these fellas act like they invented it or something, or they'll poo-poo something, right? So if they can find the science to back it up, then they discovered it. But if they can't yet, if they don't yet have the tools for it, then they can sort of brush it aside. And I think that, each person should use their own inner discernment about what seems true for them and what feels like, does it feel good for you? Come back to yourself and forget everything that everybody else is telling you. Engage with these practices with respect, and do them if they make you feel good.
Yeah.
Not because somebody said it's real or not real.
Or said it works or doesn't work, or it's going to prove this or make you feel this way. Whatever it is.
Yeah. And I think that also is like, if you do something repeatedly, so you do something, if you commit yourself to it, and maybe keep a journal of like how it makes you feel, like if you like science or, quote, evidence, then be your own laboratory and perform experiments within yourself that give you a sense of, does this move the dial for me?
Mm.
And that's part of what I love about, about the yoga tradition and Tantra in particular, is that it does give you a variety of different tools depending on who you are and depending on what your constitution is and what the season's doing and what the weather's like and what you've been, have you been flying a lot? Have you been, eating too many crackers and popcorn versus, eating warming, grounding foods or whatever. So that you can look at everything really holistically and balance your self based on all of those different circumstances,
Absolutely. And just to one final thing on science, when you said, do what feels good. I mean, sometimes, it's more than just, again, that transaction of the thing that you're doing. Sometimes it is the, giving back to yourself and being in that moment. I mean, it's more than just the thing that you're doing. And how often do you hear of, that placebo effect of when people believe something is good for them, they get better. So if walking along the beach on, with barefoot every morning is the thing that you do because it makes you feel really good, but then you hear that it doesn't do anything for you, but what does that matter at the end of the day?
Yeah. Yeah. I think science is so great, and
it is obviously,
it's wonderful. Like neither of us are like anti-science, where I'm here for it. And I think there are things that we don't have the language for yet.
Exactly.
So I think you just can't. And also so much of science is like the way that it's being interpreted, right? So it's not fail safe. I guess that's the thing is, you've got to take undocumented things with a grain of salt, but you also need to take some of the science with a grain of salt and also reflect on like the capacity of what science is able to measure now versus what science was able to measure even like 20, 40, 50 years ago.
Exactly.
It's a phenomenal difference.
Yeah.
So I'm curious and excited to see, where it's going to go in the future, because so far, most of what I see in terms of the science that's coming out around, meditation and yoga nidra and yoga asana and pranayama and working with the breath is just basically confirming everything that the yoga tradition has been saying for thousands of years, which is so cool.
Absolutely. Yeah. So let's talk about some breathing techniques, because you mentioned obviously they can stimulate certain energies, or sorry if I'm not using the right language around that, but using it as a tool to, whether it is, increase our energy or calm us down. Tell us about the techniques used for that sort of thing.
Yeah, so it's a complex framework in terms of like there's different things that you can look at and different variables and then different ways to approach it. But if we just went with, let's just pick one, and let's just talk about sort of energy, that you could sort of correlate to the nervous system. Like they're not directly correlated, but again, it's like sort of talking about the same thing in different ways. So if we look at creating, let's see, where to begin. Let's talk about the breath. Has 4 parts. So we have inhalation, the retention after inhalation, exhalation, and suspension after exhalation. So those are your 4 parts of the breath. So if you've ever heard of box breathing, essentially you're working with those 4 parts of the breath in an equal ratio. Now, each aspect of the breath has a different energetic impact or effect. So, for example, the inhalation, I mean, it's very intuitive when you think about it. The inhalation has this sort of uplifting, energizing, building quality. And therefore, the retention after inhalation also has those qualities, right? So you've got that couple. And then your exhalation has a grounding, calming, soothing, releasing effect. And the suspension after exhalation shares those qualities. So then you have that couple. So you've got these 4 parts that have 2 distinct sort of effects on the energy. And what you can do is basically work with the 4 parts of the breath in different combinations to be able to create a either energizing, building, sort of enlivening effect, or a calming and grounding effect. So that's just one example of things on the menu. But that's what ratio breathing is. So when you see people breathing in for different numbers and then holding the breath or exhaling for different numbers, they're working with the ratios of the breath, and they loosely kind of can, correlate to this sort of nervous system of sympathetic and parasympathetic. And that's why it's important not to demonize the sympathetic, because there are times where we need that building energy. So that's one example of how you can shape the breath. Another example is to use valves. So I mentioned that earlier. So a simple one that if you've gone to a yoga class, you probably are familiar with is Ujjayi breathing. So Ujjayi breathing is a yogic breathing technique, and it's really easy to learn. So what you're doing is creating a valve at the throat. And what I mean by that is you're creating a very slight contraction at the back of the throat. And that allows you to slow down the breath and gives you more control over the speed of the breath, and the sort of makes it very easy to shape the breath into different ratios. It also increases the contractibility of the diaphragm. So and remember, the diaphragm is the number 1 muscle for influencing the vagus nerve and bringing the parasympathetic nervous system online. It also slows down the breath, as I mentioned, so it balances the amount of oxygen and carbon dioxide in the blood and the tissues, and gas imbalances, as Jackie can tell you, are associated with anxiety. So it really is an amazing, super simple technique for creating calm. And there's been some studies done on it about how effective it is in reducing anxiety. So to do it, all you need to do is you can learn how to do it super easily by breathing in through your nose, and then on exhale, open your mouth and make the sound or the gesture in your throat that you would if you were fogging up your sunglasses to clean them. So that sound, and you can even hold your hand in front of your mouth if you like, because that can kind of give you that sensation of the warmth in the air landing on the palm of your hand. So you breathe in through your nose. And then this time I want you to breathe in through your nose. And as you exhale, about halfway through the exhale, close the mouth and keep that contraction at the throat as you finish the exhale with a closed mouth, so that you're actually breathing out through your nose. So we'll do it together. We'll inhale. And it creates this really soft ocean sound. So now that you've got that down, you can just inhale and exhale with that little contraction at the throat. So what you should be experiencing is more sensation at the throat, and a vibration there, rather than sort of at the nostrils. And there's a subtle ocean sound that you're hearing. Is that you? I know you know how to do that, Jackie, but do you have anything to add in terms of like how you experience it?
No, I mean, your words, I mean, for me, really connect. So the fogging up and what that sounds like and feels like, I mean, I understood that straight away, even the first time I learned that with you. So I don't know if yeah, I can't speak for others, but like, would you even say like if you had to put a sound to it, like Darth Vader sort of?
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like a gentle Darth Vader.
Yeah.
And it's a heating, a warming breath. And so because there's also these aspects of like, temperature that we're working with, coolness and heat in the body. And different things are called for different people in different seasons and whatnot. But this is a heating breath. So it's good for that heating quality also lends itself to, sort of maybe a vata imbalance, which is one of the doshas that would tend towards anxiety. So there's all these different layers within one thing where it's like it's good because it's this and this and this that really comes from this like incredible network of this system of these different techniques and technologies. So what you can then do is basically couple the ratio breathing. You don't have to do it this way, but this is a really fun way to sort of integrate those two simple things that you've just learned. Is there's 4 parts of the breath. I can use the ratios in different ways to create a different outcome. And you can couple that with ujjayi. You don't have to. You could just do ujjayi by itself. But what we can do is, a practice for, you can choose, Jackie, if you want to do something that's calming or steadying. Ujjayi is quite calming, so it's a nice one to couple with a langana, which is the calming aspect. And we'll just go through it and see how it feels for you.
Yeah, calming sounds good. I think we could all use a calming.
Okay. All right. Well, let's do that. And, this is a practice that you can really do anywhere. I love it because it's subtle, and the more subtle the sound is, the less heating it is. So, you would want to use varying degrees of subtlety with that sound and with that contraction, depending on, in the beginning, I think it's nice to make it really pronounced as you're getting used to that sensation. But in time, you might find that it can be more subtle so that someone sitting next to you might not even hear it. But this is just such a wonderful foundational technique to have in your toolkit. So just as a reminder, you're going to create that gentle contraction at the throat. I'll cue you on when to begin it, but you're going to be inhaling and exhaling through your nose if that's available for you today. And you're just creating that gentle contraction so that you have this very soft sound of the ocean. And if you want to just remember how to do that, it's like you're fogging up the sunglasses. So it's that ha sound, that sensation at the throat, but with the mouth closed. Let's begin. Okay, so just come to a comfortable sitting position. This obviously, you don't want to do this the first time while you're driving, although once you're familiar with the technique, you can do it anytime. But for this first initial run, just see if you can carve out a few minutes to sit still somewhere. And just, if you're in a chair, you want to scoot forward so that you're sitting on your sit bones, and you can rock side to side and sort of pull the fleshy part of the seat out so that you can feel the sit bones connect with the surface beneath you, and then plant the feet on the floor if you can. Otherwise, you can sit on the floor and do this. You just want to add a cushion or a folded blanket beneath the sit bones, so that will elevate the hips above the knees. And the reason that's important is if you are sort of sitting on your tailbone and curving forward, arching forward, and creating that sort of C curve in the spine, then you're compressing the abdomen, and that's not going to allow the diaphragm to move fully. And you really want the diaphragm to be able to do its thing so that you get the full effect from these techniques, because again, the diaphragm stimulates the vagus nerve, which creates the relaxation response. So all of that in mind, just find a nice comfortable seat, taking time to gather any props you need, and then just go ahead and close down the eyes and close the mouth, breathing through the nose. And as you come into stillness, just let your senses be fully awake. Noticing the sounds in the space around you. Noticing sensations in the body. Noticing thoughts. the speed and frequency of thoughts, the tone, quality of the thoughts. Just taking a snapshot of the quality of the mind in this moment without judgment. And now become aware that the body is breathing, not changing or shaping the breath, just noticing the body breathing, allowing the breath to move in and out of the nose. Begin to notice the navel rising and falling as the breath moves in and out. Just following the movement of the navel as the body breathes in and out. Now, please apply that gentle contraction at the throat, the Ujjayi technique, creating a valve at the throat so that the breath makes a very subtle sound like the ocean. Feeling and sensing and hearing the sound of the ocean on the breath. Feeling and sensing the vibration created by this gentle contraction. Hearing the sound of the breath. And continuing with that Ujjayi technique, begin to gently shape the breath, inviting it to be equal in length on inhale and exhale. I'll count you in for the first few rounds. So exhale freely to prepare. And now inhale 1, 2, 3, 4. Exhale 1, 2, 3, 4. Inhale 1, 2, 3, 4. Exhale 1, 2, 3, 4. Inhale 1, 2, 3, 4. Exhale 1, 2, 3, 4. Continue on, keeping that gentle contraction at the throat. And if you need to shave off a count or add to the count to make the length of the breath more comfortable for you, just go ahead and do that. You want to just keep the ratio of the breath equal so that inhale and exhale are equal in length. Shoulders are relaxed, belly is soft. Just a few more rounds, in for 4, out for 4, or whatever count is comfortable for you today. You can go ahead and release the counting, but have the intention to keep the breath even. And as you continue to feel and sense the breath, you might feel, see, sense, or just trust that the breath is like a stroke of paint. The paint stroke rises up on inhale. The paint stroke moves down on exhale. Noticing that the paint stroke is the same on inhale and exhale. Same texture, same thickness, same length on inhale and exhale. Inhale mirrors exhale, exhale mirrors inhale. taking your time. There's no rush. Each time you come to the space between inhale and exhale, and inhale, that transition point between the parts of the breath, just see if you can relax a little more deeply, allowing any space between inhale and exhale or exhale and inhale to dissolve, creating a smooth and unbroken flow of breath. Maintaining that ujjayi breathing, gentle contraction at the throat. On inhale, the paint stroke rises up. On exhale, paint stroke moves down. Graceful transition, easeful transition between inhale and exhale, exhale and inhale. And go ahead and relax the technique, releasing the contraction at the throat, releasing the visualization, no longer shaping the breath in any way, letting the breath return to a natural tidal rhythm. Noticing the way the breath feels even smoother and more effortless now that you've released that ujjayi technique. A silkiness in the breath. Notice how the body feels. And then notice the quality of the mind. Comparing it to the snapshot you took at the beginning of the practice. Noticing if you've created any change, any shift in your state in just these few moments of shaping the breath. And set the intention as you merge back into life to bring a quality of groundedness, calm, and ease with you. Deepen the breath, maybe wiggle the toes, rub the thumb against the fingertips in each hand. And gently flutter the eyes about a third of the way open, keeping the gaze soft. And then another third. And a final third. Coming back and taking in the space around you. All right, so that is ujjayi breathing. How do you feel, Jackie Tan?
I feel really quite zen.
Good.
And I must say, prior to doing that, there was an underlying sort of electric current feeling within me, and that's backed off completely. Feel much
Great.
clearer.
Good. Such a simple technique, but so powerful. And what I love about it is that you can do a seated practice, eyes closed, like we just did, but you can honestly do it anytime. You can do it in the car, you can do it on the train. I often do it when I'm laying in bed with one of my kids, trying to get them to go to sleep. Just because that takes patience, right? Like you just got to be with that, and it takes as long as it takes. And so doing that as a way of helping, for me, it helps me wind down, and also just sort of land into presence with what is happening at that moment, which requires a great deal of patience sometimes.
Yeah.
So you can just find these little opportunities in your day to weave that in. And there are studies that have shown, I think I mentioned that before, just that, doing even, I think, 15 minutes over 6 weeks, 15 minutes a day over 6 weeks created a change in anxiety for people. So that's really powerful.
Absolutely.
Any
And
questions?
not so much a question, but I have to say that, when you said land,
Mm-hmm.
land in yourself, or however you put it, which was perfectly put, because that's exactly how I feel when I use this. And I've done it many times at work between clients,
Mm-hmm.
because sometimes there can be a lot of energy exchange and shifts, and um, sometimes there's things that I have to think a lot about to, whatever the client's dealing with, and how to break things down, and rebalance, and in the treatment, and whatnot. And so that really just pulls me back out of my head into my body, and
Mm-hmm.
into the moment. So I use this so much. It's
Great.
really, really beautiful for all moments.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and what we did there was we did the ujjayi breath, but then, which is creating a valve at the throat, and that, reduces the airflow. So it makes it easier to sort of direct how quickly or slowly you're breathing in and out. But it also increases the contractibility of the diaphragm, which again is the number one muscle for influencing the vagus nerve. And it's because we're slowing the breath down, it rebalances the gases in the blood and tissues. And those imbalances are often associated with anxiety. The sound and the sensation on the breath are offering the mind a focal point, which helps us to sort of settle and land into presence and into our bodies. But then also we did a ratio. So we did what's called samavriti, where we did an equal inhale and equal exhale. And you can do that with or without the paint stroke visualization. For people who don't visualize, you can just drop that. You don't need it. It's really just another sort of offering another way to make the breath feel more tangible. But what was key there was using the count of, so we did 4 for 4, but you can absolutely alter that to whatever count feels easeful for you, because you never want to push it. So if it's a little less than that or a little more than that, that's totally fine. You just want to keep the ratio on inhale and exhale equal. And that's called samavriti. And that is the stabilizing, kind of grounding, equalizing ratio. And so it's a perfect one for, what you were just describing, where you need to kind of like land back and rebalance. And there's, like we've talked about earlier in this episode, different ratios can create different outcomes, but that in general is just like a great go-to to layer with ujjayi, because it can also, the counting is another task for your mind to attend to. And so if you do have that tendency to sort of drift away, now you have sound, sensation, and the counting and the visualization. So there's a lot to sort of like capture the mind's attention and focus in that one practice.
Perfect. So
Just
much
because it's
there.
nice to know the why behind all that stuff, I think.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So good. I don't think I've got anything else. I mean, that was just perfect. So
Okay. Magic. Well, I hope people can come back to that as often as possible, and yeah, really enjoy that practice. I'm actually going to be putting in heavily meditated app in the next few weeks. So you can find it as a painted breath practice in the app if you're looking for another place to find it.
Beautiful. Amazing. Caitlin, thank you so much.
My pleasure.
That was Caitlin Cady. How zenned out are you now? I mean, if you did the breath, if you didn't do the breath work, please take some time to do it and then get back to me and let me know how it felt for you, because I know, we've all got different things going on in our lives. And sometimes when we talk about breathing techniques, it can bring up some anxiety for some people. So I would love to know how this technique is resonating with you, and if you're feeling like this feels different and that it's helping. It certainly helped me, especially through some difficult times a few years ago. So I would love to know how it's helping you. And if you're yet to do it, let me know when you're going to do it, and if you're excited to try it out, because I got to say, at the time when I was trying out different breathing techniques and meditation, I wasn't excited about it. And I'm one who's constantly in my head, because they were really gentle. They were gentle. And so it felt more accessible. It felt like I could do it straight away. And I felt the benefit straight away. And when it's that powerful, it makes everything else easier. So I would love to know where you're at with breathing and breathing techniques, and especially breathing through the nose. If that's something that you also find challenging, let me know. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did and it resonated and you know others will learn from this as well, then I would love for you to share it with them. If you have the time, a review would be so awesome. I would really appreciate that. And, take a screenshot of this if you're listening to this on your phone, and then, tag me in your stories or on Instagram. I would love to connect with you. It makes it so much better when I can see or put a face to the ears on the other end, could you say? Thank you again for tuning in. I appreciate you. Have the best day, week, month, and year. Stay awesome, and I'll catch you next time.